What's up? So today's video is a bit of a different video, almost shall we say an academic video. I've been reading a lot of books recently and listening to a lot of audiobooks, and I thought it would be a good idea to share with you some of the main ideas and lessons that I've learned from these books in order to relearn them myself by recording them and talking about them, but also to share with you some of the key insights from admittedly some of these long books. So let's get straight into it then. So the first book of 7 is Guns, Germs and Steel by Jared Diamond. And basically this book seeks to answer the question as to why Eurasia and the northern parts of Africa like Egypt and parts of the Middle East developed technology and society before the rest of the world, and particularly the southern hemisphere, and how that led to the northern hemisphere in particular, Western Europe and America, being the powerhouse developed societies that they are today compared to the underdeveloped rest of the world. And so if you go back in time, back when everyone was hunter-gatherers, certain societies, certain places had better plants, had better weather, and had better geography, and had the right kind of plants and animals that could be domesticated. And so these societies, these hunter-gatherer societies, slowly transitioned towards farming. And now what farming does is it allows you to have a surplus of food. And when you've got a surplus of food, some of the people in your society don't have to gather food all day. So they can be lawyers, politicians, they can invent things, and boom, you have an industrialized society. And so this happened in certain parts of Eurasia, the Fertile Crescent and that's why parts of the Northern Hemisphere developed, while other places like Southern Africa and Australia didn't, which allowed these nations to completely dominate the rest of the world. Guns, because obviously you can shoot people you don't like. Germs, because you can take your germs that you've developed resistance to and spread them across other populations that don't have an immunity to them, wiping them out. Basically, when Columbus and them went to the Americas, and that far more Native Americans died from the flu than were killed by Spanish inquisitors or that. Not something the history books tell you often. And then steel, obviously railways, trains, basically anything in industrialized society is made of steel. And that really led the Northern Hemisphere, Eurasia, Western Europe, and America after it was colonized by Western Europe to becoming the powerhouses they are today, and led to the global power balance that we have today. And so interesting. Lucky geography, good weather, and the right kind of plants and animals led to the world we know today. Next up is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. So this was a really interesting book about success, and about why success doesn't just depend on innate genius or that guy's so smart because he worked so hard and he's so successful and he deserves it, but rather success is a combination of luck, the environment you grew up in, and a whole lot of other factors like the right circumstances, the right time of year. In particular, he goes on to talk about Bill Gates and Bill Joy, pioneers of the computer revolution, and how they were the right age and born into the right kind of wealth, that they had the time and experience and opportunity to work on computer systems in an era where computer work was very rare, and then this led them to be pioneers in their industry. He also goes on to talk about sports stars and how about sports stars born at the beginning of the year have a natural advantage to guys born later in the year because they have more physical prowess at lower levels of the sport, and then they get picked for the first team in grade 1 and then all the way up until university, then they get put in the national side, and then most guys in the Premier League are born in the first half of the year because they've had this advantage all their lives. Really interesting. He also goes on to talk about how Asians are better at maths, not because of some innate ability for maths, but rather difference in ancient farming techniques, and how Westerners would farm grain, and grain you farm on big open lands, it doesn't need to be efficient, you just do it, and then the rest of the year you chill. Whereas Asian societies farmed rice, which was a highly intensive, skilled, delicate operation that required constant work, and this lends itself to better ways of teaching and better ways of approaching schooling. In particular, the Asian alphabets as well are shorter and can fit more words in a single breath, in a single memory cycle he was talking about. And this has led to literally Asians dominating in maths in the modern day era. He also talks about how culture and school and your childhood all shape your success. And it was a really quite eye-opening account of, we can't think about success as this big thing out there that you get just because you work hard. There's quite a lot of luck involved as well, and it's important to remember that. Next up is the Case for Mars by Robert Zubrin. Really excellent book. I'm only about halfway through this book at the moment, but literally a book about why humans should go to Mars and how we can get there with modern day technology and modern day techniques of science. Just really interesting. NASA has been bugging around for years, and still to this day wants to go to the moon first, wants to build a space gateway, and then wants to go to Mars. Robert Zubrin argues that we must much rather focus on getting to Mars, because there we can unravel how life developed in the galaxy, whether it's developed anywhere else. Excuse me. And how we can go there with current technology. This old-fashioned idea of sending a massive rocket with all the fuel it needs to return to Earth on a one-way trip to a planet that just comes back is a really outdated idea. And so what he instead proposes is you send ahead the rocket that's going to return the astronauts or whoever goes to Mars back to Earth. It lands, and you send it with a chemical plant, which uses already existing chemistry, by the way, to develop rocket fuel from the Martian atmosphere, whether it's methane or hydrogen, it depends. This is a proven chemical process that we've done on Earth before, so we can do it there. So the rocket ship is fueled, we send a small spaceship with the crew and all the supplies they need there. The rocket, you live off the land there by using Martian resources and that to build a whole lot of supplies and structures and that, and then you return to Earth in a really efficient manner. We talked about opposition and alignments, the different kind of orbits and that allow different kind of Mars trips to happen. And it was just really interesting. But in particular, the ideas of living off the land, a chemical plant producing the return fuel, and sending the return craft ahead to Mars is something that NASA really should be considering. And I know SpaceX and Elon are considering it, but this book was written before he was even around. And so it's incredible to think what's going to happen in the next few years in my lifespan. And so that's why I'm just really enjoying listening to it. Then for a little bit of fun, I've been listening to the Artemis Fowl series by Eoin Colfer. Really cool fantasy about like a teenage criminal mastermind and his involvement with like an underground fairy society, the police force of an underground fairy society. I don't know, it's light-hearted, but it's very witty, and the author writes these really realistic, comedic characters that I've really been enjoying. And it's just really nice to wash dishes to, and to have something different to listen to and to keep fill your mind with. And yeah, it's a good story. I enjoy Mulch Diggum's and Artemis Fowl's witty banter. So that's the fiction I've been reading at the moment. It's meant for young adults, teenagers, but I've been enjoying it. He's a good author. Then, of course, we come to Steven Pinker's Enlightenment Now, The Case for Reason, Science, Humanism, and Progress. I've been struggling through this tome for a while now, but it really is an absolutely excellent book. Bill Gates says yeah, it's his new favorite book of all time, and it's starting to be one of my favorites as well. Basically, he argues in this book that the world is the best that it's ever been right now, and that if you would pick a time to be alive as a human, now is the time to pick. Simply because infant mortality is the lowest it's ever been, homicide is the lowest it's ever been, freedom is the highest it's ever been, people die from the fewest illnesses today in all of history, there's the least war, there's the least death, there's the most understanding, there's the most peace. Oh, it's just, I could go on and on. I think I want to make another video about it, but literally every item here, every chapter, inequality is the lowest it's ever been, sustenance is the highest it's ever been, the environment is not the healthiest it's ever been, but certainly we're the smartest we've ever been, and the most capable of solving the problems we've created. Knowledge, equal rights, quality of life. It's just a really fascinating book, and why to have optimism in a world that often screams pessimism at every corner. So I've really been enjoying it, and I'm going to make a video about it in the future. But just yeah, really good book, giving me optimism and even some ideas for a career path after I've finished my engineering degree in that. In particular, there's some really cool tech startup ideas that he's mentioned, which I think really might have some potential to change the world one day. I then also want to give a quick mention to Robert T. Kiyosaki. Yeah, Robert T. Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I listened to this in like an afternoon a couple of weeks ago, and a very light read and not the most full of information, but a personal finance book that basically goes on to say you need to learn what an asset is and how to differentiate it from liabilities. And if you want to be successful and wealthy one day, you need to acquire more assets than liabilities and expenses in your life. And so, very interesting, basic example, instead of acquiring a house that you have to pay a mortgage on every year, you need to acquire a house that you can rent out every month and earn income in, that you can then buy stocks and shares in companies with, things that always give you money and that never take money away from you. Really interesting, some other really good ideas about personal finance and how to manage your money, and I learned a lot from it. I enjoyed it. Now, I haven't started reading this one yet, but I've been anxious to read it. Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep, The New Science of Sleep and Dreams. I've mentioned this several times, with basically why we sleep, why sleep is important, the physiological processes that sleep involves and causes, and what happens when you don't sleep, what happens when you do sleep. I'm really scared to read this to find out how bad my lifestyle actually is, but I'm going to read it. You must educate yourself, and God, that book smells good. But yeah, hope you liked this video. Really interesting, just something different for a change. It's so important to educate yourself in the modern day world, because even if you're going to school, sorry, this flu is catching me. Even if you're going to school and you're at varsity like I am and that, you learn a very small particular subset of knowledge, and it's important to read deeply and widely in a variety of fields so that you can go out into the world as an informed citizen, and you can talk about big ideas, and you can put big ideas out into society and, you know, just do great things in the world. So thank you for watching. I've been really enjoying these books. I'm going to carry on reading them when I got some free time. And yeah, let me know if you're reading anything in the comments below. Like and subscribe for the YouTube algorithm. My friends have been on about me about increasing the amount of clickbait on the channel. But need those views, man. Thanks for watching, and I'll check you soon.